C1. You are listening at FameTV.info. The melodious music of the wedding march was transmitted to the dressing room, when one covered her burning cheeks, got up and walked to the door, and leaned on the crack of the door as she peeked outside. Outside, the guests were almost seated. The hall was filled with her favorite feral beast sect flowers and flowers. Deep and shallow purple surrounded every corner of the hall. In another half an hour the wedding would begin, and she would be Mrs. Han. Ding ding. She had just sat back in front of her makeup mirror when her cell phone rang. Hello. She had just said 2 words when she heard a furious roar from her side. Wen, you slut. Grandma, why was she so angry? Wen had always known that his mother-in-law didn't like him, but she had also never scolded him before. Just when he had somehow offended his mother-in-law, the door burst open and the makeup artist rushed in panting, pointing with a strange expression. Miss Wen, quickly go out and take a look. What was going on? When Wen held up her white dress and ran out in panic, everyone in the hall was standing, looking in one direction, the wedding stage. There was a large display screen on the wall behind the stage, and a group of photos were rolling on it. The female lead was Wen, and the male lead was an unfamiliar face. She was under the man, and he picked her up and held her against the window. She was wearing a white silk nightgown, her long black hair messily entangled on her body. This appearance. She was truly a demoness that could sweep away a man's heart. Wen's mind buzzed. Hot blood rushed to his head. What was going on? Who's the P for these pictures? She didn't know that man at all. Wait, this hotel. This hotel was the one she stayed in half a year ago when she was on a business trip. Her long skirt was thrown on the floor, and her bag was on one side. The woman in the photo was her. That's right. That if the photos were posted, how was she supposed to explain them? She hadn't taken them in her room. Suddenly, a hand grabbed her hair from behind her back and pulled so hard that her scalp was about to fall off. She covered her hair with difficulty, trying to avoid the slap on her face. Wen, it's fine if you pester my son, but you still dare to do such a shameless thing. Grandma grabbed her hair and shook it, slapping her head and face again and again. Guests took pictures of her on their cell phones, taking pictures of her getting beaten up. The immense shame and fear made Wen not even know how to explain himself. Enough. A table covered with a snow-white tablecloth flipped in front of Wen, and the crystal wine set on it fell to the ground, smashing it into pieces. Han Ting's eyes became red, and like an enraged wild beast, he grabbed onto Wen's wrist, staring intently into her face. He gnashed his teeth and said, "Just treat me like that. Wen, how can you treat me like this? That's not me." "It's not, Han Ting, what are you wasting time talking to her for?" Lin Piru, who was also wearing a pure white dress, twisted his waist and in front of Wen, wrapped his arms around Han Ting's waist and looked at him with disdain. She ridiculed, "A woman like her is only here for your money. To think that you were so good to her, to think that you would do such a shameful thing. No. Han Ting, it really isn't me." Half of Wen's face was swollen from being hit, her makeup was all messed up, her veil had fallen off, and her high heels had long been kicked to who knows where. She looked at Han Ting and Lin Piru, and suddenly understood that she could not marry anyone, and this man did not believe her. "Are you still not going to drag me out? Disgraceful." The old granny used the snow-white silk handkerchief to wipe her hands, then crumpled the handkerchief into a ball and threw it towards Wen. "I'll go by myself." She opened her mouth, her voice hoarse and unpleasant. The guests parted to look at her and discuss the matter. She could no longer hear anything in her ears. He walked out of the wedding hall with numb feet, stepping over the debris on the floor. Rumble, heavy rain poured down. She looked up at the falling rain, tears streaming down her face. The rain quickly dampened her wedding dress and dragged it heavily on the ground. She couldn't keep her eyes open as 2 beams of light shot from the front. In the strong light, she forced herself to open her eyes and look at the dazzling light. Her mind became heavier and heavier as both her legs went limp and she fell into the muddy water, fainting. The car came straight at her. Just as the wheels were about to hit her legs, she suddenly stopped. The two lights flashed for a long time, and the car door opened. A black umbrella stretched out from the car, followed by a pair of shiny leather shoes and a pair of perfectly straight pants that he completely got off the car, his big body standing in the bright light as he walked step by step towards one who was lying in the mud. Listen to the full novel at FameTV.info, direct link in the description.